You're listening to Just Believe, sponsored by Just Believe Recovery Centers, with your host, Brenda Swift, as she discusses all aspects of addiction, recovery, and sober living. And now, your host of Just Believe, Brenda Swift.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Just Believe Radio. I'm Brenda Swift. I'll be your host today. We are a show about addiction and recovery, and we're discussing the problem, the solution, and all controversy surrounding it. We're here on 900 AM, the Talk of the Palm Beaches, Monday through Saturday from 3 o'clock. Today we have an hour segment of 3 to 4, and the number that you can call is 877-309-3635. That's 877-309-3635. And I am here today with two guests in the studio who have been gracious enough to come and share their experience with us. We've already heard Karen's story. She was involved with the show earlier this week, and I'd like to welcome back to the show Karen.
Thanks, Brenda.
And her daughter Shannon was an integral part of her story, and I was very impressed with how she was able to handle the situation with Karen reaching her bottom and going into treatment. So I did want to have her on the show and give her an opportunity to share with the families out there exactly what brought her to the point of knowing how to handle that. I'd like to welcome Shannon to the show.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi. All right, and then just to catch everybody up, there was a story that went along with how Shannon got involved there at the end and kind of changed some of how she'd been handling things with her mom up to that point, and it made a big difference. So I'd like, Karen, if you want to recap a little bit that section of your story so people know exactly where I heard Shannon make such a big difference.
Oh, sure. And she did make a difference. I had, Shannon was kind of always, I depended on her a lot to cover for me, to do a lot of things for me. But when I was ready, in my mind and my heart, I knew I needed to go to treatment. I told my daughter, and I told her, this is what I'm doing. I was abusing the alcohol, verbally admitting everything she may or may not have known already. But I told her that I was abusing the alcohol, I was smoking crack, and I was taking pills, and I wanted help. I was going to go into treatment. And she almost kind of stone-faced said, okay, Mom. And she wrote the phone number down to where she was going to, and she said, when you're ready to go, call me. And she walked out the door. That to me was like the most alone I have ever felt. I can't really describe the alone feeling. I was totally alone. She had walked out the door, and I was standing there with myself. And still knowing in my head and my heart what I needed to do, but at that very moment, I still wasn't ready to take that step to physically go into treatment. That took another few days. And I did. Do you want me to go ahead? Okay, and what I did, I'm going to say, and I said before, it's a little foggy, the number of days. I'm going to guess it was 3 to 4 days later. I continued because I still wasn't out of drugs. I still wasn't out of alcohol. And, you know, I never stopped until I was out. And 3 or 4 days later, when I was just about out of drugs, I called my daughter at that number. And I hadn't spoken to her in those few days that I know of. And I called her and I told her, I just said, Shannon, and she said, are you ready, Mom? And I said, I am. And within that first 30 minutes, she was there. Her and her girlfriend came home, and they had a bag of McDonald's and I believe a chocolate milk. And she came in and told me, eat this, drink this milk, and we're going to pack your suitcase. And then that was probably within the hour we were in the car going to treatment.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And that was also the first time, Shannon, that you had, or actually there was one situation prior to that you had made a different choice from cleaning up after your mom and lying for her and taking care of her. You had mentioned, we spoke at length last night as far as the story went, because these are two very important people in my life. Karen has been involved for 18 years, and I was, blessed to be a part of Shannon's life as her son grew up as well, and daughter. So I got to hear a lot of detail about Shannon's story last night. She had mentioned that there were some turning points that brought her to the point of making the change in her own behavior that added to what Karen had mentioned was a big part of everything. I was just so, as I said, I was already very impressed with how that played a part, that at 16 years old, to know how to make that choice as opposed to continuing to do what you'd always done. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to that point?
I think for me, I was just really tired. I was tired of constantly lying, not knowing what was going on, not knowing really where she was at. And I was just numb by that point.
And you become that after a while, after you try to. The families of addicts and alcoholics are constantly trying to make sure that they don't suffer the consequences of their behavior. They're cleaning up after them. They're taking care of legal problems, and they think they're helping. That's the big part, is that they don't realize that they're part of the problem along the way, because the addict doesn't experience their own consequences. They never have any motivation to actually stop doing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And that changed. When did that change for you? When do you feel that it made a impact enough to walk away at what might have been a critical moment any other time when somebody's asking for help?
I can't really pinpoint exactly what it was. There was one instance where I received a phone call from an officer, and I think that's probably when it really started for me, was when I got a phone call saying that my mom was involved in a hit and run, and it was her who left.
Oh.
And he wanted me to call her, or have her call him when she got home, and she didn't, so I did.
Oh, that was a big step.
Yes. It was hard to do, but I knew at that moment that there was a lot more behind. She wasn't just drinking.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I'm done. Can't do it anymore. I'm not going to, that was wrong to leave someone. I didn't know the details. But it was wrong for her to do.
And probably realizing that other lives were at stake now, too, with the driving and accidents. And so what happened after you made that call?
The officers came out to the house, and they talked to her. And I think luckily they didn't arrest her. I know that sounds weird, but
Mm-hmm.
if they would have arrested her, she probably wouldn't have gotten the help. I think their talk with her, their understanding of where she was at, just helped lead her even closer to making the decision to go to treatment.
And that was a very short period of time prior to what you just spoke about, when you did actually go to treatment. Is that right, Karen?
Right. I believe it was probably between 1 and 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
It was, in my opinion, a very short span. Yes.
In comparison to how long it had been going on.
All my life.
Right.
Right. 1 month, I'll gladly wait.
Mm-hmm.
But if I could explain a little bit about the situation Shannon is talking about, the officers sat down at the table with me, and this man, I have the most respect for. This hit home with me too. It hit my heart. The officer said to me, "I could take you to jail right now, Miss Karen." And I was really not comprehending everything that was going on. But what he said to me was, "I don't really think it's jail you need. I think you just need some help. I think you need to get some treatment." And he left me his business card and a ticket. And they left. We had a conversation that lasted a little bit longer than what I just explained. But basically, he knew I was in trouble with drugs and alcohol. He knew where I was that night because of where the accident was. He knew what I was doing there. And he told me, look around you. He said, just look around you. You have a beautiful daughter. You have a beautiful home. You have everything. I think you need some help. You don't need jail. And it just stuck with me. It was one of those moments that just stick with you.
Oh, certainly. It's scary to
Right.
have police show up at your door and know that you've got that kind of problem going on
Right.
and about to go to jail, and then have somebody... I actually had a police officer at one point ask me if I had a problem. I remember I was sitting in the back of his squad car, and he looks at me in the rearview mirror and watched me for the longest time, and he said, do you have a problem with drinking? And again, that the impact of that moment with police and the possibility of incarceration again,
Right.
there was that really stayed with me as well.
It's scary, but it's also, from the other point of view, these are people in an authority position, but they're also recognizing the human part of it,
Right.
the addiction part of it. And they know that throwing people, of course, unless you're, hurting someone, harming someone, or doing something, robbing, but they realize there's a human part of it, and this person may have a problem. And they also know that throwing someone in jail is not going to fix their problem.
Right. For those just joining us, we are at Just Believe Radio. I am Brenda Swift, your host. We are at 877-309-3635. I have Karen and Shannon in the studio today, and we are discussing the families of the addicts and how they can stop the patterns that continue to keep the addict sick, either learning to be part of the problem or part of the solution. And at that point, then, Shannon, you were still in the house when the police were there?
Yes, I was.
And what was your involvement at that point?
I actually was in my room and just let them do what they had to do, and I was actually shocked that they didn't take her.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have any involvement in that conversation at all.
Did she realize that you had been the one to call the police?
Yes, I told her.
Okay. And was there any response or reaction or any kind of...
Right away there wasn't, but probably about 4 a.m, she came in my room and kicked me and my girlfriend out of the house, told us we had to leave.
And you basically didn't have anywhere else to go at that point?
No, I went and stayed with a friend and stayed gone up until I got the phone call to come home when she told me.
Okay. So as far as anyone listening right now that has, similarities in their story to cleaning up after a parent or being involved in crisis after crisis and they're just trying to manage it and cover up for that type of thing, what would your suggestion be to them? What brought you from that point of continuing the same cycle of being part of the problem to being such a huge part of the solution?
I think for me, I was tired of not having my mom. Although I didn't really know what it was like to have my mom. I had an idea of what it was like to have a mom. But the best way for me to describe it is I was just tired. I was tired of watching her do the things that she was doing because I knew they weren't right, even though I would keep lying for her and covering up for her and basically helping her stay sick.
Yes. And realizing that was part of what you were doing was before the police officers then.
Yeah, I was keeping her sick.
Right.
And I didn't really want that on me. Because at this point now it was becoming where there could be possible physical dangers. Okay, she's out driving, she's drunk, she's hit somebody now. What if it gets worse? I would almost feel like it was my fault because I didn't do anything to help her.
Absolutely. We do have to take a break, and I am here with Shannon and Karen, come back after the break and we'll talk more about what the families can actually do to help people get the help that they need.
At Just Believe Recovery Center, their highly trained staff has a combined 50 years in recovery and is certified to help with each client's individual needs. The program at Just Believe Recovery Center brings those suffering from addiction and their families the understanding needed to begin healing from the devastation and begin the path to a new and fulfilling life in recovery. The staff understands what addiction has done to your family and that no one chooses to become sick. At Just Believe Recovery Center, with a therapeutic process and a caring staff that understands addiction, their clients can choose to become well. Go to justbelieveradio.com for more details and call their 24-hour hotline today, 877-309-3635. That's 877-309-3635 for caring guidance and an end to the pain of addiction now. Just believe there is another chance and call 877-309-3635 today.
Welcome back to Just Believe, sponsored by Just Believe Recovery Centers, with your host, Brenda Swift, as she discusses all aspects of addiction, recovery, and sober living. Now, back to your host, Brenda Swift.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Just Believe Radio. I'm Brenda Swift, your host, and I am here with my guests, Karen and Shannon. Karen, would you like to say hi again?
Hi, Brenda.
And Shannon is sharing her experience with being part of the family of the alcoholic and addict and helping give some insight as to how she made some changes that really affected her mother's life as well as her own. Welcome back, Shannon.
Hi, Brenda.
I've worked in admissions for quite some time prior to this and had probably 75% of the people that I spoke to on the phone were the families of the alcoholics and addicts. And primarily the biggest thing that they do that makes a difference in being able to get the addict willing to actually get help is to stop, exactly like you're talking about, stop cleaning up after them, stop making everything okay with it, stop trying to smooth things over. You know, instead of being able to keep a happy home in the midst of all the insanity, they stop picking up after them and let them fall on their face. And there's such a fear associated with that because especially with the addicts, that most families are afraid they're going to die. And the reality becomes that they're going to lose them because they continue to add to the problem. They don't ever see their own consequences. They think that keeping the secret, and that's one of the things that we learn along the way, is that we're only as sick as our secrets. But keeping that secret and protecting that addict becomes the biggest thing that they focus on in their life, even above their own needs. Has that been part of your experience?
It's been a huge part of my experience. Mm-hmm. I always felt like I was the mom. So when it finally got to the point where she was going to get help, I was almost lost for a lot of reasons because I didn't know who I was. I didn't really have any problems to take care of. I didn't have any issues that I had to focus on. So it was kind of like, okay, now what? Not only is my mom going into treatment, but now what do I do? So it was scary, but it was necessary. And for both of us.
Of course. And that's the biggest part of all of this, is that families don't realize that they have shut down their own needs. Their entire existence focuses on, keeping the calm in the family, if they can, do anything to keep that tornado from picking up and leveling everything, which is the addiction. And a lot of the families don't realize that when the addict does get the help they need, that it's very important for them to be part of the process of getting help, of learning their own patterns and how they contribute to the problem. And that's one of the things that the sponsor of our show, Just Believe Recovery, does have a good family program. And that was how we started talking about this issue in the first place, is that if the families don't get involved, mm-hmm. the addict goes back to the same situation and they start the whole process all over again. Has that been your experience as well, Karen?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. When I went into treatment, of course, we've discussed this so many times, Brenda. It was just so much relief in the sense that I knew I was safe. I knew I was going to get the help I needed, but my mind was thinking each day that I was without drugs and alcohol, I was thinking, what did I do to my daughter? What did I do to my life? And the reality started setting in. And I was wondering how on earth everything was going to fit after that, because I was almost I'm going to say the leader of the pack in the house. I mean, everybody kind of revolved or moved around what Karen said and did, unknowingly, of course, or maybe I did know for the most part. I'm not real sure. I would think unknowingly. It was almost like a tap dance around my addiction.
Right, making sure you were okay.
Exactly. For, the relationship and the relationship I had with my daughter. And it was like everybody had to know how Karen was doing today or what she was doing today before they could actually know how to go on about their day.
Right.
It's not a good place to be.
No, and it's repetitive as far as each time there's a relapse, and each time the family comes to the rescue, trying to save the embarrassment and further damage. They lie, they do all kinds of things in order to be able to keep the peace and keep it from hopefully happening again. But they don't realize that they're definitely part of the problem. What type of things did you do to make excuses for your mom's behavior, Shannon?
Oh boy.
All kinds of things. I mean, I would lie. There's so many of them. There was so many times. Most of it I lied. I lied a lot.
I can imagine. I'm guessing a better question would have been, what didn't you do, along the way? There pretty much wasn't anything that we get to the point of there's really no line that you cross until you get to the point, like you said, of there being possible harm to other people with driving and leaving the scene of an accident, and that type of thing apparently made a big difference in your mind as to what was not acceptable.
Well, it did, for sure. I didn't want her to get hurt. I didn't want somebody else to get hurt. So, I mean, I did almost everything to make sure that my mom's butt was covered at all times. I mean, I would drive when I was 14 years old. Didn't have a driver's license, but I would drive because she was drunk.
Of course.
So I'm a good driver now. But
She is
Started early. Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, there were tons of things that I would do. I probably never stole for her. That's probably one thing I never did do. I never stole.
Well, yeah, I don't think I stole much except for a lot of life out of you.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
Like your childhood
well, it's all okay now.
today.
Well, the things that we also see is that our experience starts to help other people, and that's one of the things that Shannon wants to do, is become a child counselor and share some of the things that she's learned and felt over the years. And I think it takes firsthand experience of really absorbing what that feels like as a child, to be able to commit to being able to help other ones that are going through the same kind of thing. From what I absorbed in our conversation last night, the primary thing that you went through, as well as what I shared I did in abuse, was the aloneness, the completely and totally alone, feeling like we don't fit in anywhere, that the rest of the world, because we hide what's going on in the home at all costs, nobody else knows how it feels. And we always feel like we're, kind of marching to a different drummer, that there's always, they're the normal people, and then there's us. And was that pretty much what you experienced most of your life?
Absolutely. I mean, there was, from as far back as I can remember, I always felt alone. And I'm like, alone, unloved, So it was hard for me to adjust, and I never wanted anybody to know the things that went on, that the ones that I could hide, because there were plenty of times that there was no hiding her. But the ones that I could hide, and I would see other families, and I used to say to her all the time, when